Joao, Tasso de Sousa will be our first speaker. And the point of this session is really to hear these particular examples where people have been working on maritime domain awareness and protection of specific areas. And Joao will be our first presenter, and then we have Kubal Sakuma from Palau, who's come a long way to join us to talk about their work in Palau. And then our blog will then speak about her efforts in Chagos and beyond, and then Caitlin will speak about the California case study. And so I think what I've asked all the speakers to do is to leave a few minutes at the end for questions. There are a lot of bright people here, and we appreciate all of you joining. And so I'm hoping at the end of the case study, like a few minutes before the end, that there'll be time for discussion and feedback. And then after our morning case study time, there's a number of signups over here. And tomorrow we're going to have a breakout where we all join and then focus on kind of a deeper dive into that particular problem and what can be done around it, and how might those who are in that breakout contribute either with ideas or otherwise. So after this morning session, then if you wouldn't mind just signing up for one of the case studies, and then we'll break out tomorrow at 3:30. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil. Please introduce Joao, and thank you so much, Joao. It's also come a long way from Portugal. We're really delighted that you could join us today. And
So let me go ahead and introduce Joao. Joao is from the University of Porto in Portugal, and he runs a group there for maritime systems that are connected in the computer engineering department. And it's a sort of interesting university. There's 10 big cubicle buildings, and they have 5,000 engineering students, and Joao pretty much sings off the best ones from what I've seen. And his laboratory group specializes in autonomous underwater vehicles. He's begun work with autonomous surface vehicles for a number of years, and he has also a group working on unmanned aircraft. And he's been conducting joint operations with the group from NATO in La Spezia, Italy, and they're actually sending their icebreaker, the Alliance, over to Portugal. So they've been able to do a system every year of working with the Portuguese Navy and the Portuguese Air Force and the folks in charge of port and harbor security. And each year they've added on the capability to get the underwater vehicles to talk to each other, to talk to the surface vehicles, and to talk to the aircraft. And he has been using the delay and disruption tolerant networking protocols that we got basically from the So he has the best connected system of autonomous vehicles in the world right now. And he's been putting that to pretty good use. And I kind of cattle prodded him a few years ago to start working with some of the other countries where Portuguese is a big language, and I think he's probably going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Good morning, thank you very much. Bom dia, in Portuguese. So I have a long name, but here in the US I'm just Joao Sousa. And here in this picture, see part of motivation for my talk. So what you see here is the outer limits of the Portuguese claim for the extension of the continental shelf. And this provides this is a huge motivation for our developments. So an outline of my presentation, so given this motivation, so developments at Porto University, then Portuguese Challenges, Sargasso Sea, Cabo Verde, St. Mary's, I'll say just a few words about this, Mozambique, experiments with network ecosystems and conclusions. So just a short overview. So I'll start with Porto. I come from Porto, a beautiful city, as you can see. The house of heirs and navigators. So I'm glad that we already talked about what it is in the past. University of Porto, School of Engineering, is our lab. So basically we've been building, designing, building, and deploying unmanned ocean and air vehicles for network applications. And those include oceanography, marine biology, security, and defense. So we are doing this in cooperation with Portuguese Navy and the Portuguese Air Force, and we have funding from the Portuguese government, from the EU, NATO, COINAR. And given the challenge, the extension of the continental shelf, the question is how to address that. And this is our vision. So basically you have lots of assets, and the question is what you do with them. So basically you have different types of interactions, so localization links, communication links, so you have interoperated networks, you have radio comms, then you have underwater communications, then you have gateways, then you have sensing links, mixed initiative interactions, meaning you have operators in the planning and control loops. Vehicles may come and go, especially if you're talking about 24/7 operations. Same thing with operators. And moreover, since we are in a communications challenged environment, you also use vehicles as data mules. Moreover, if you look at these, you can think of these as a system. And so we can think of these as a portable and scalable system of interacting autonomous vehicles and operators. Why do you think of this as a system? Because you can get properties that are a function of the vehicles, of the networks, and also of the interactions. And so right now, we are building and developing all the technology required to have this in place in the future. Cooperation, just go briefly through it, in Portugal, in the US, in Europe. An important observation, so we started recently cooperation with Norway with an eye into the Arctic, and also with Brazil, Mozambique, and India. Some of our ocean vehicles, so we started with a Remus type vehicle. We bought it from Woodstoll, actually it was the first ever sold by Woodstoll. And since then we've been designing and building our own vehicles. Basically these are low cost. They have basically common software and hardware platforms. We are also concerned about interoperability. These vehicles talk to each other, and these are designed for interactions. We are also working, because this is an important piece for a sustained presence in the ocean, into launch of recovery, in this example, from manned submarines. But this is also important for, let's say, launch and recovery from other vehicles. We're also working on communication gateways. Basically, for example, here you have communication gateway so that we can talk Wi-Fi, Iridium, Inmarsat, GSM, and then you can connect these two cables in acoustic modems for underwater communication. So we can form above water networks in underwater networks, communication networks. And high performance data loggers, and also more recently tags for fish. Aerial vehicles in cooperation with Portuguese Air Force, I won't go into details, different types of vehicles. But if you ask me about what's my favorite one, this is my favorite one. Low cost, flight time up to 1 hour, range 10 kilometers, you get video feed in real time, hand launch or catapult launch, and it's fully autonomous. And you can play a lot with this and test lots of things together. Something else that we have also been working with is this deep sea ROV in cooperation with Portuguese Task Force for the Extension of the Continental Shelf. And this is another element of what we are doing. Now what concerns supporting all of these vehicles, so we have our own software tool chain. So basically off-board we have Nexus for command and control, on board we have Tune for intelligence, and then we also developed our own communications protocol for the vehicles to talk with other operations. Moreover, and working with Canarajan from Yambari, we also have autonomy on board. It is quite unique. So we have plans generated on board, and then you can send high-level objectives to the vehicle. We are also working, as Phil mentioned, on disruptive tolerant networks, and this is just an example of operations under intermittent connectivity. This is quite relevant when you're operating in communications challenged environment. So basically using, for example, vehicles as data units. We're also working, then again, another piece of our work is communications hub for situation awareness. So we have vehicles communicating using, for example, Wi-Fi, acoustic communications, GSM, SATCOMs, Iridium, Inmarsat, you name it. So you send this information to this communications hub, and then the hub routes and say what you need for situational awareness. In terms of operations, so we've been running operations in the Atlantic, also in the Pacific, here in Monterey, in the Adriatic Sea, and also in the Mediterranean. And large-scale exercises, as Phil mentioned, are very important for us, and we learn a lot from them. And basically, we are trying to connect the dots and to develop the technologies required to support this vision. Now going into the Portuguese challenges in relation to MDA. Basically, it's about the geography. And if you look at this map carefully, I have a pointer, but so you have continental Portugal, Madeira Islands, Azores. Then you have the 200 nautical miles limit for the EEZ. And here you have the extension of the continental shelf. This is our claim, which was presented to the UN in 2010. Interesting spots, thermal vents, which is in Portuguese, and also lots of seamounts. Okay. Thank you. And it's big, as you can tell. Moreover, so this is one of the largest plains in the world, and we have some remote areas, both in 2D and also in 3D, can go down to 6,000 meters. These are communications in energy challenging environments. There are some global connections because we're in the middle of the Atlantic. Something that's also a concern for us, a good concern, is Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Going in more detail, lots of seamounts in the Azores. And when you talk about seamounts, you talk about fisheries and you talk about trawlers. And going into more detail, so what you see here is the OSPAR area, and you see bans on fishing trawlers. Now, talking a little bit about the EU Maritime Strategy Framework Directive. So basically this was adopted with the aim of protecting and managing our seas and oceans in a sustainable way, and the objective is to achieve and maintain the good environmental status of the European seas and oceans by 2020. And okay. Oh, okay. So basically, another important issue is the need for continued research on the identification of vulnerable marine ecosystems and clear assessment and mitigation of impacts. So this is described here. And the challenges are a sustained presence in the middle of the Atlantic, monitoring and surveillance in real time, MSFD data collection, according to this new directive, and support management of MPAs. Getting into more details, and then again, so this is the Azores Islands, so the 200 nautical mile limit, and then the extension on the continental shelf. Something very interesting, and Portugal was the first country to establish an MPA beyond the 200 nautical mile limit, Rainbow. And right now we have, or we are working on several MPAs beyond the 200 nautical mile limit. Another important consideration, if you look here, so you have a small MPA here, another one there, but then people are interested in mining there. So Portugal got a request from Nautilus Minerals concerning deep sea mining there. Concern could also be good, I don't know. Challenges, then again, same challenges as before. And now going into more detail, let's talk about the Rainbow MPA. So this is one of the hydrothermal vents located in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It was discovered in '97, 4 years after some other MPAs were discovered there. Rainbow was outside any national jurisdiction, but it became an MPA in 2007, and it was one of the first MPAs beyond the 200 nautical mile limit. The important observation, and there are lots of legal issues here, it was accepted before the process of delineation of the outer limit of continental shelf was concluded. But right now, Portugal must create a system of rules and management plan to implement with intention to protect the Rainbow MPA. Same challenges. Now, let's say, going from the specific into the Atlantic. So, same map. And basically, we are at the intersection of ship traffic, distribution of plastic is the major concern, fish migration, so just a few examples. And of course, what you have here is global links and threats. Garbage, oil from vessel discharges, negative impact of the fishing, illegal dumping, exotic species introduced by ballast waters, climate change, in ocean acidification. Before we are talking about specific challenges, specific to given region, now we are talking about connected challenge. Atlantic scale monitoring and surveillance, Atlantic-wide studies. For that, we need common data format, because otherwise, if you're working here and working there, you have data, I have data, we can share data. The issue of scalable systems, the issue of interoperable systems, the issue of composing systems to achieve systems of systems, the issue of making sure that your vehicles can be used for different purposes, and the issue of shared developments and shared resources. Another important observation, which is quite relevant to what we're discussing here, right now, up until now, I've been talking about this area here, but Portugal, we still have some good connections with our former colonies. So starting with Cabo Verde, Guiné-Bissau, okay, I'll say it in Portuguese, Cabo Verde, Guiné-Bissau, São Tomé e Príncipe, Angola, Brazil, Mozambique, Goa, and East Timor-Leste. And this is quite important for several reasons. One of them, then again, ocean means connections. Portugal will become the second language in the oil and gas industry. We should keep this in mind. This is something that we should consider if we want to talk about MDAs and protection of the oceans. Another, just kind of a small observation, I won't talk about Guinea-Bissau, but there's the issue of illegal fishing there. Now moving into the Sargasso Sea, and let's say things being connected, basically what you have is you have a Sargasso Sea ecosystem, which is a unique open ocean Sargasso-based ecosystem, which is very important for the life history of many species. And the Sargasso Sea Alliance has basically 4 objectives: to build an international partnership that will secure recognition of ecological significance of the Sargasso Sea, to use existing regional, sectoral, and international organizations to secure a range of protective measures, to establish a management regime for the Sargasso Sea, and probably as important, to use the process as an example of what can and what cannot be delivered through existing institutions. And they have a very robust science case. I don't have time to go into details, but basically you can find it here. And basically similar challenges, except for the MSPA. Brief observation about Cabo Verde and São Tomé e Príncipe. You've heard about Cape Verde. So Dakar in Senegal is there, Cabo Verde is here, and it's a poor country with some natural resources, with few natural resources, but fish and shellfish are plentiful. Issue, illegal fishing. So, and moreover, this is also at crossroads, and this means that the issue of maritime security, domain awareness, and border control are quite relevant there. They're also working on the extension of potential shelf. Challenges, they have few assets in place. It's not a rich country, it's a wide area, it's also at crossroads, and they need control international aid. São Tomé e Príncipe, a similar problem, the Gulf of Guinea, and it's a beautiful place. Fish and shellfish are also plentiful. The issue of illegal fishing is also a concern, and they have oil. Not sure if this is good. The same challenges. Now turning into, okay, I'll say it in Portuguese, Mozambique. Without going into lots of details, the issue of Indian Ocean and strategic importance of the Indian Ocean. So basically we have rich natural resources there. 70% of the total traffic of oil goes through the Indian Oceans. There are a few choke points. And the issue of political stability is quite important there for several reasons that I won't go. Several challenges. Maritime boundary delimitation. So Mozambique ratified the UNCLOS, but there are some overlapping claims with other countries, and there are some unsettled territorial and maritime boundaries. Maritime routes, you have lots of traffic there, ship traffic, and keep in mind that Mozambique is still a poor country, and they don't have, let's say, many ways of seeing what is going on there. Okay, corollary, maritime pollution. This is just one example taken from ESA satellite, a study that lasted 6 months. Maritime safety and security, what are the challenges? They have porous borders, especially from north. Piracy is a main concern. drugs, illegal hunting. It's basically an open space, so anybody can go there. They have few naval assets, no incident response assets. They have some few AIS capabilities. They have lack of integrated response. The economy is quite poor, and they lack skilled manpower. So it's very difficult for them to take care of security. Some challenges, but moreover, you don't have skilled people there. Good news is that you have some pristine waters there, some ice reefs there. They established this MPA, 10,000 square meters big. This is to the north of Mozambique. This is quite important, and definitely it's very interesting. But there are some threats coming from fishing, illegal fishing and tourism. But also, and probably unfortunately for them, there's also the issue of trends in offshore exploration. This is becoming an issue right now. Now, just last section of my talk, just so I described, let's say, some of the challenges. Now I'll say a little bit about what we are doing with network level systems. So we have this systems thinking. So we have a system composed of products and processes. And in what concerns products, there's a need for open systems, for low-cost systems. There should be simple to operate, low maintenance, designed for interactions, easy to replicate, for scalable systems and multi-road systems. And especially when you talk about countries, for example, like Mozambique or so, you need to do more. Technology doesn't solve the problem. So there's the issue of capacity building, the issue of local development, the issue of inclusive programs, the issue of solutions-oriented, network building, co-development, linking what you do there to global efforts, and maximizing the audience. Keep in mind that this is a poor country, so okay, the ocean is a concern, but there's also the issue of droughts, there's also the issue of, let's say, rain or so. So when you think of solutions that can address multiple issues at the same time. This is the issue of policy development. Now, just kind of to finalize, as Phil mentioned, so we've been organizing this exercise in cooperation with the Portuguese Navy since 2010. So we deploy most of these vehicles from the ship from the Portuguese Navy. So the exercise typically takes place during July in 2 weeks. So we had people in the past from US Navy, and in 2012, so we had MDA, Porto University, NERC, UC Berkeley, and Liquid Robotics. So we had a wave glider there. And this is some of the things that we did. So we had land-based operations, so search for targets for UAVs, surveillance of maritime traffic, handover of control from shore to the Navy vessel, video feed to shore into Navy vessels. We also had ship-based UAS operations. We also demonstrated disruptive torrent network, so where humans could control, operators could control vehicles in close real time. And we also had AUVs kind of mapping the bottom of the ocean, talking to ASVs at the surface, and ASVs relaying information to control stations. 2013, basically same exercise, different people, different goals, fire warfare, harbor protection, expeditionary hydrography, and I'm almost there. And so we had truly autonomous AUV and AUV operations. So basically we had autonomy on board, which is quite important. We had coordinated observations for coastal fronts using UAVs and also AUVs. And we had mixed initiative control of ASVs, AUVs, and UAVs. Something that we did for fun, but it was quite interesting, was chasing hammerhead sharks in the Azores. So from the air, very simple. Close to, let's say, this was here. We also participated in the Cannon experiment in 2013. So we brought one of our vehicles here. We described the details. Basically what we had a wave glider as a communications hotspot. Our vehicles, so there was one vehicle from us and one vehicle from MBARI, so they would come to the surface, send data to the hotspot. Hotspot would send data to shore, and then we also get commands to shore to the motions of the vehicles. Sunfish tracking, this will take place in about 3 weeks in southern Portugal. So basically we'll be chasing sunfish. We'll use fish tags, we'll use UAVs, and then we'll also use wave gliders and AUVs basically to track sunfish. And now some conclusions, if you're into surf. Portugal is quite relevant in this sense for crazy people. And so just some conclusions. So MDA and ocean observation basically generally present significant challenges. Why? Because you have connected man and man-made systems. You have multiple spatial and temporal scales. And this is region specific, so there's no silver bullet. Network vehicles are key to MDA. I'm not saying that they are the solution, they are part of solutions. But we should keep in mind that vehicles will be designed for interactions. Development models should be targeted at scalability, interoperability, and open systems to minimize cost and facilitate replication. We should co-evolve our developments with developments in communications, energy harvesting, sensing, and big data. We should learn from experimentation. We learn a lot from experimentation. You should establish networks of partnerships. That's also one of the reasons why we're here. And you should also think, especially when you're talking about, for example, countries like Mozambique or other countries, the development of personnel. And this is pretty much what I have to say. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Joao. I know we're a little bit over it, so we may just turn over discussion to the breakout next week. I mean tomorrow. And tomorrow will you focus on Mozambique or looking broadly at Azores as well? In the case so tomorrow, if you want to sign up for the session breakout tomorrow, we'll have greater discussion about sort of deep dive into what he's doing and what other synchronization you have with other people's efforts. So with that, Margot, I was wondering if you could please come up to introduce Mr. Wow.
Hi, so I'm Margot Edwards. I'm from the University of Hawaii. And to be fair, KB and I actually met at the end of January this year. So like a lot of island folks, when you meet them, if you're from Hawaii, hey, how you doing? KB had his aloha shirt on, I had my aloha shirt on. Didn't know what to expect. Within a few moments, he whipped out his Honolulu driver's license, right? Knew everything that I knew, everything about the islands or my islands that I already know. But in the meantime, I found out that he's been living pretty much all over the world as a representative for the president of Palau, talking about maritime domain awareness. I think what you're going to hear today, well, I don't want to preempt his talk, is a different story than we just heard from Joao about Portugal. Palau's in a very different situation, but they've made the incredibly, I think, bold decision to try and protect 65,000 square kilometers forever. So, with that.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's funny, whenever island people see each other abroad, you can kind of tell where they're from.
Hey.
But, I just have some slides of Palau. So